started yet.
Hi, Jacob.
All right. How are we doing? Good? Bad? Worse now? Okay. Sorry. So, you're missing a couple today. Almeen, how we doing? Good? Tired? So, how do we feel about World War I?
It was
Terrible? Why terrible? It wasn't too bad, you guys? Were you there, Jordan?
Yeah.
How was it? How was it on the front lines? Yeah, what kind of problems did you have?
Trench foot.
Trench foot, yeah, that's one of them for sure. Food, that's another one. Probably artillery bombing down on you night and day, right? Day and night, things of that nature. So, we have now seen some of the horrors of the Great War, right? And we know a little bit about kind of the home front, right? Remember the Espionage Act, and then that wasn't strong enough. It's not enough to spy on your neighbors. You have to have even lower reasons, right? So, can someone read for me this poster? One brave soul. Not all at once. I know everyone's very excited and we're just after lunch.
I need my glasses.
Just one person. There we go.
Don't talk. The lead is spun with invisible threads. Keep out of it. Help to destroy it. Stop things. Ask yourself if what you were about to say might help the enemy spies from the system.
Is that a very friendly poster?
No.
Spies are listening. Gentlemen, stop talking. Spies are listening, right? The web is spun for you with invisible threads. Very ominous. Very scary. Right? So, one of the things that comes out of this is Schenck versus United States. So, Charles Schenck was a socialist and anti-war advocate, right? He mailed out little flyers to draftees. Boys in the back, off your phone. Thank you. Appreciate it. Mailed out circulars or flyers to draftees saying that the draft was wrong and it was motivated by the capitalist system. What do you think he meant by that? Why did we get involved in the war to begin with? Very talkative. Good job, guys. Surely someone knows. We've gone over it.
We were giving weapons to people, and then the Lusitania got stung,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, that's the inciting incident for sure. So we wanted to protect trade, right? And who benefits from trade? Specifically, capitalists. Jordan, stop. Specifically, capitalists who own these companies, right? So you're going over there, you're fighting a war, you're protecting trade. Are you the one that benefits from that? No, you get shot at. That's your big reward, right? So Schenck mailed that out and said the draft was wrong, was charged with violating the Espionage Act, right? And the decision is 9 votes for the United States, right? 9 votes for the United States. Do you know how many Supreme Court justices there are? All right, Chromebooks away. I'm sick of it. Put them away. Let's get some sort of participation. Right, Josh Brink? How many Supreme Court justices are there? There are 9. So it was unanimous. Unanimous against Schenck, right? He violated the Espionage Act. This seems like a low bar. He is destroying the war effort, right? That is what they're saying. Do you think that that is what he's doing? Is he presenting a clear and present danger to the United States? What would you guys consider to be a clear and present danger?
Threat.
You talked about this yourself for years in government. This is actually the case you talked about.
A threat. What kind of a threat?
To attack.
Yep, to attack. That could be one, right? If someone has a gun pointed at you, that's a threat. That is a clear and present danger. Do you find mailing a flyer to draftees saying that the draft shouldn't be allowed, is that a clear and present danger in your eyes?
No.
No. But the Supreme Court unanimously decided that it was, right? So what does this mean for freedom of speech? What does this mean for our freedom in general? What do you think? It's not allowed, right? We don't have a lot of freedom of speech. If you can't lightly criticize something, right? If you're going to go to jail for it, do you have freedom of speech? No. And during the war, over 2,000 people outside of Schenck were prosecuted, right? Including newspaper editors, socialists, anarchists, union leaders, and critics of the draft. Why do you think they were prosecuting these groups of people? You have newspaper editors, socialists, anarchists, union leaders, and just critics of the draft. Right. They viewed union leaders as socialists because they wanted power for the working people. They viewed socialists as good as communists, who they did not like in this period, right? This is the beginning of it. And they're using this as a way to put these people in jail or to prosecute them to kind of, as a first Red Scare is what they'll call it, right? We have the second Red Scare in the 50s where people get pulled in front of Congress for being communists, but this is the first one. Does that make sense? Does anyone have any questions?
Unfortunately, this isn't the only time our government's done this. We had the Alien Sedition Acts with John Adams.
Yep.
And in the beginning of your lifetime, we had the Patriot Act, which did a lot of the same things.
Yep. The Patriot Act is still doing a lot. Also, anti-German sentiment was high. If you remember in the movie, people got killed, people got tarred and feathered just for being German, right? And all of these things went along with that. But this war was good for the economy. Cha-ching, right? This was the first war that actually was good for the economy. Why do you think that might have been? We were manufacturing and selling weapons, and who was kind of unable to do that at this time? Who?
The Germans.
Like the Germans, the people whose entire countries, factories, everything like that is being decimated by the war, right? We sold them weapons.
Not the
Right.
Germans.
Not to the Germans, to the British, but we made a lot of money off of this. This is, again, a theme you'll see throughout the last 110 years of politics. There is a big weapons manufacturer here in St. Louis. Do you know the name of them?
Starts with a B.
Starts with a B.
Budweiser.
Boeing. That's right.
Budweiser.
They do make beer bottles, which I guess would be.
We are going to talk about that.
Molotov.
So, we make a lot of money. Do you think the workers are making a lot of money? Honestly, more so than most times.
Wages went up in America because men got shipped overseas, right? 1 million men went overseas. Guess who finally gets to make some money of their own?
Women.
Unfortunately, it doesn't help African American men, but it does help women.
And what comes out of this moment in time? At the end of the war, there are a few amendments that get passed. One of them is
Women's suffrage.
women's suffrage. The other one is it has to do with Budweiser.
Alcohol.
Say it louder.
What is it, what about?
Alcohol banned. That is right. Prohibition, right? So we had money to spend, but you had to go to underground speakeasies if you wanted to have a drink, right? And by the end of the war, we were the wealthiest nation in the world because the other nations were either colonized by Europe or Europe themselves, who were destroyed, right? So before the war, we owe $3 billion to foreign nations. At the end, $13 billion. That's, I think, close to, let's see, like $150 billion today, something like that. So that's a lot of money that the world owed us at that point, right?
I'll take it.
I'll take $150 billion right now, right? So the war ended. Americans were ready to return to normalcy. They were tired of not eating pork on Sundays. They were tired of not eating chicken on Mondays and beef on Tuesdays, right? I mean, yeah. And the world was obviously transformed by World War I, right? 22 million soldiers and civilians died. That is a lot. That is about as much as what the Black Plague killed in the Middle Ages, right? 20 million wounded, 10 million turned into refugees. This is devastation that we hadn't seen before. Why did this happen? Why was it on this scale? How did so many people die in such a small amount of time? Because what? So this is supposed to be like kind of a conversational thing, right? You guys say stuff, I say stuff. We just watched a whole video on it.
What new weapons have been invented?
Machine gun.
Machine guns. We have industrialized weapons,
I was gonna say.
right? Industrialized weapons and trench warfare, right? You're sitting in a trench and the enemy is firing artillery at you, and then if you get up, you're getting shot with a machine gun or a sniper rifle. There's going to be a lot of deaths, right? This is also the first time that planes are used in warfare. You about to say that? Yeah. Planes are now being used, right? What can you do in gas, right? Poisonous gases, right? Mustard gas. So a lot of people dying, right? The land is being transformed. Does that make sense? You were seeing like entire forests blown up, entire buildings that were there, cities just completely
Oh, wow.
burned to the ground. You also have the people that are wounded. Do you think these people only carry physical wounds with them?
No.
What else do they have here?
Psychological.
PTSD. They called it shell shock at the time, right? Because if you got shelled and you were in that feeling all the time, you're going to come out of it in a state of shock.
One of the things that happens after the war, because they prohibit alcohol, a lot of these veterans, people with PTSD tend to fall into alcoholism. When there was no alcohol to be had when they returned, the suicide rate is unbelievable.
There's also a lot of opiate use.
Yes. Which was still legal at the time.
Right. So, like I said, entire villages just burned to the ground, unrecognizable, right? All of these houses are made of like brick, wood, things like that, and they're just gone.
Tragic.
It is. Right, this hotel, isn't that right, Hayden? All right. So, when the war ended, Woodrow Wilson thought that America should take a lead in the peace process. Do you know what his plan was called? 14 points. Good job, Makai. The 14 points. Right? The plan was based on eliminating the reasons for World War I. Do we remember why Europe went to war in the first place? Not why we got into it, but why Europe went to war.
Oh,
Colonization, right, of Africa. For what? What does everyone want?
money and profit.
Money and profit from
Resources.
resources. That's right. So he wanted to eliminate these reasons. Do you think he was eliminating it for everyone? who was going to be able to remain imperial power? It's us, right? We still have the Philippines. We still have Puerto Rico, right? We are still trying to exploit the global south for resources. And he hoped to avoid future wars by creating an international organization to discuss problems. Who remembers what this international organization is called?
League of Nations.
The League of Nations. Good job. The League of Nations, right? He wanted everyone to come together, sing Kumbaya, right? Do you think that this is how it went? Do we have the League of Nations today? No, we do have the United Nations, this is kind of like the prototype for that. But we are going to look at the 14 points. The first 5 focused on international rules, right? So number 1, open covenants of peace, openly arrived at. Jordan, can you tell me what that means?
Gotta come back to me.
All right. Can someone first tell me what covenant means? What is a covenant? A group of people? That's a coven.
Oh.
Close.
Bunch of witches.
Drew, what's a covenant? What does it sound like?
Organization.
Kind of. It is a formal agreement.
Organization.
So if we say open covenants of peace, open agreements of peace, openly arrived at, what are we saying?
Lots.
All right, Jordan, now you know what it means. What are we saying?
Say it real quick.
All right, open covenants of peace, openly arrived at.
Like, it's just like, it agreed to have peace.
They agreed to have peace, but did they do it behind everyone's back? Is that what openly arrived at means?
Come on.
Okay. Thank you. So we don't want any like back alley deals, right? If me, Miss Adams, and Coach Hill are all nations, and I make a deal with Miss Adams behind Coach Hill's back, will Coach Hill be happy about that?
Nah.
No. The whole thing was open dialogue will help resolve conflict, right? Have you ever been told that by parents or other teachers? You want to communicate, right? That's kind of the idea here. We also have freedom of the seas in peace and war. Should be self-explanatory. What does it mean?
What was one of the things that got us into the war?
Trade.
Has to do with the sea.
Territory. Seas.
Well, that's where they are.
Josh Brink. Freedom of the seas in peace and war. What does that mean to you? Freedom of the seas in peace and war. Gabe, you want to help him out? Let's keep our head up then. Yeah, don't have submarine attacks on commercial vessels, right? Equality of trade conditions. Again, we all want free and equal trade. Reduction of armaments.
Come back into the last one.
Yep.
Has anybody ever been on a cruise?
No.
When you're on a cruise, did you hear them say, you're in international waters? Guess what got developed at this time? That's the one thing that happens with the 14 points that's still around.
Yep.
When you go, that Great Britain can't claim the whole Atlantic Ocean like it had claimed. It basically, you get, what is it, like a couple miles off your border?
Yeah.
And then it's everybody's water. By the way, just so you know, outer space is kind of the same way, kind of like why old Elon wants to get to Mars so he can start grabbing stuff.
Right. So, reduction of armaments. Can someone tell me what this means?
Weapons.
Weapons. What are we doing with the weapons?
Reducing it.
Reducing them, right? Good job. We got that one. And then adjustment of colonial claims with reference to the wishes of the governed population. This is a fancy way to say what?
Like changing around territory.
Changing around territory based on what?
Yeah, population based on population.
Based on the wishes of the population. So you're giving them sovereignty, right? The ability to choose their own way. Does that make sense? Cool. The next one, is the changing of territories, and we'll discuss that when we see the map in a second. And then finally, we have the League of Nations. We wanted to settle all future international problems by diplomacy, right? We don't want to just bomb each other. Does this work? This is World War I. What happens after that?
World War II.
And then what else? The Vietnam War. Then what else? Korea, the Cold War, all these different wars. The Iraq War, right?
That's great.
So we've not been good at diplomacy. So Woodrow Wilson travels to the Peace Conference in 1919. He meets with these three gentlemen who are the prime ministers of France, Italy, and Britain. Two of them have really cool mustaches. One kind of looks like a walrus.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. It makes me chuckle.
It does look like a lot.
So, Wilson wanted his 14 points to be the framework for the peace treaty. Do you think he got his wish? No, because we're all the way over here, right? We did not see a lot of fighting. The people who did see fighting and on their borders and in their lands were France, Italy, and Britain, right? All these countries wanted Germany dealt with once and for all, right? We'll get to that in a second. Yeah.
The British, the French, and the Italians, I don't even know why they were invited because they kept jumping back and forth on different sides. They had actually been on the German side. But the French and the British wanted to punish the Germans. And guys, the hatred of the Germans and the French goes all the way back to Napoleon.
Oh, it goes back farther than that.
Well, I mean, but I'm saying
Yeah.
to these people, they're still fighting over land that was lost and gained during the reign of Napoleon. And we get upset about things that maybe happened a few 10, 15 years ago. These people are holding on to things for like 200 years.
Which is crazy because they weren't even alive back then.
Correct.
Kind of, yeah. So Wilson did have to compromise some of his points. The Treaty of Versailles is an important one, right? Was agreed to. Do you think that the U.S. ever was part of the League of Nations? You say yes?
Yeah.
No? Yeah? Seeing some yeses, some nos.
I'm not sure.
Not sure anymore. We were not.
Oh.
And we will get to why. So, the delegates agreed to create a League of Nations, right? And this would have been made up of 27 total nations. They agreed to use diplomacy instead of war and agreed to work together, right? So what they did was they divided up the lands that were previously held. Jacob, can you turn your head this way, please? Thank you. So what differences do you notice in these maps, Hayden?
Well, they're more different.
They
Countries are island.
They look different. So there are new countries created out of old countries, right? We now have Poland as part of what used to be Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary, right? We now have Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Palestine, right, as what used to be the Ottoman Empire and Arabia. So the map is being redrawn in real time here, right? Yeah.
You guys may have sitting there thinking like, okay, what does this happen? This happened over 100 years ago. I don't care. If you look at the land that the Ottoman Empire had and then what that Turkey has now, there are things going on in Turkey. If you've heard of the Armenian genocide, Turkey is now trying to take over Armenia again. And I just saw a recent picture. Where I was at Friday, there showed a picture of the president of Turkey, who is supposed to be in NATO, with an extermination thing spraying on Armenia, meaning they're going to exterminate them. So if you don't think people's feelings were hurt after this, you are very, very wrong. Now, it manifests quicker in Germany than it does here, but We are a young country. I know it's hard to believe at 250 years old, we are young, but it matters. Guys, get your heads up. Hey, that wasn't lifting. Put it back down. Keep it up.
So, like we said, the Ottoman Empire was divided. Britain and France gained mandates in the Middle East. Why do you think they were given these?
That,
Would love just any response. That would be great. Makai,
can you repeat it?
why were Britain and France given the ability to kind of redraw the borders of the Middle East?
Other two.
Yeah. They're trying to control the resources that are there, right? They're not giving the people that live there the agency or the sovereignty to draw their own borders. I'm sure throughout your guys' lifetimes, you've heard so many times about the situation in the Middle East, right? There's always something going on. Part of that is because the borders that were drawn after World War I were not drawn based on lines that the people themselves would have drawn, right? It's based on what European countries wanted to carve up.
And what
Right.
minerals they wanted.
And what minerals they wanted, specifically at this time, oil, right? Okay. The other provisions, the biggest one here is going to be war guilt. So, Germany and Russia were not invited to the Paris Peace Conference, right? Despite both of them taking a huge part in this war. How do you think that's going to go for them? Do you think their interests will be represented in the peace talks? No. Germany was forced to take sole responsibility for the war. But what did we say was the cause of the war? It was colonialism and nationalism, right? Was Germany the only one colonizing Africa? No. But they're forced to take all responsibility for the war and forced to pay $33 billion in reparations. Do you want to know how much money that is today? Does someone want to take a guess?
We said 43 billion.
$33 billion they had to pay back over 30 years. 200 trillion?
That's
A trillion.
No.
Inflation.
Is it what? It did not go down, no.
500 billion.
You're the closest one so far.
650.
It is $750 billion dollars is what they had to pay back over 30 years. Now, how do you think they were going to pay that back? Taxes. They've lost a lot of their population.
Well,
All their factories are blown to pieces.
Start another war.
Start another war and then profit off of it. How are they going to profit off of it if they don't have factories? Exactly. So they're not allowed to rebuild. Do you think this is going to end well for the world? Who comes after this? Hitler. Hitler capitalizes on the German resentments, right? There was a lot of people who were like, all of these people are the ones that put us in this position, which, not wrong, right? They were forced to pay an unfathomable amount of money in 30 years, and he capitalized on that to take power, right? They were also forced to surrender all of their overseas colonies, their military was reduced, and they had to accept full responsibility, right? That is the biggest outcome of World War I. If you remember nothing else, it is that we put Germany in such a bad position that it leads to the rise of Hitler. Yes?
Put it ourselves.
So, the treaty did not require any of the allied nations to demilitarize or give up colonies. They didn't address secret alliances, and it kept Germany from rebuilding, right? This is all around bad. However, we could not sign this treaty just yet because there was a 2/3 vote in the Senate that was needed to ratify any treaty. right? All these other prime ministers had the ability to sign a treaty by themselves. Wilson had to present this to the Senate. How many senators are there? That's Supreme Court justices. How many senators are there? 7? You went down in senators?
100.
50 states.
50 states.
Each state gets,
Each one gets 2.
50 times 2. No.
There's 100 and there's a tiebreaker. The vice president gets the tiebreaker.
I knew it.
So you need 2/3 of 100 people to say yes to this treaty. And unfortunately for him, many senators did not like the treaty because they did not want to join the League of Nations. Can you give me some reasons as to why we might not have wanted to join the League of Nations?
It could, it was like they had to agree on everything.
What do you mean by that?
You're on the right track, but you're not saying it.
They had to agree on the same policy.
Yeah, kind of.
And defend each other.
Yeah,
And
and defend each other, right? And we did not want to be part of European affairs anymore, right?
Guys, think about how did the war start? This country declared war on this country, so everybody started declaring war on each other. We were terrified that we were going to be drawn back into another war.
So there were senators known as the Strong Reservationists, which demanded changes to the League Covenant, right? So these were people that would join only in specific circumstances. Does that make sense? And then there were irreconcilables, people who would not join regardless. Okay? They wanted the U.S. to return to isolationism. What is isolationism, Josh Brink? If you're a country that's isolationist, what does that mean? By yourself. You don't get involved in other people's affairs, right? So the irreconcilables wanted to be by themselves. Wilson wanted to tour the nation trying to get support for the treaty, but he ended up having a stroke during the tour. This is the point where a lot of people say his wife Edith was the president because he was apparently not very responsive during this time. So we might have had our first woman president, we just don't know. Kind of.
By the way, 25th Amendment hadn't happened yet. You don't know what that is? That means if anything happens to the president, other than dying, like having a stroke or incapacitated, has surgery, the vice president takes over. It was completely ambiguous and unclear.
Yep.
So legally, a wife has power of attorney over her husband's affairs. She basically ran the country. The advisors would come in and say, hey, we want his opinion on this. She'd go back in the room, shut the door, come back out, oh, he likes this, or he doesn't
She'd
like
move
it.
his mouth and talk like a ventriloquist. Yeah. So, in 1920, Warren Harding runs for the presidency, promising a return to normalcy and a rejection of the League of Nations. Do you think this was a popular platform? Yes. He won the electoral vote by 76% to 24.
Great.
So you'll notice all of the League of Nations members are in black. There are a few big countries missing. What are these countries?
Canada,
The League of Nations members are in black.
the U.S.
U.S., and there's a huge one that spans Europe and Asia. Say it louder. Russia. Russia was also not invited to the peace talks, despite losing 1.8 million people in this war. Why would they not be invited to the peace talks?
They helped Germany.
They did not help Germany. They fought against Germany. They were part of the Allied powers.
Well, their previous government had fought against the Allies. I mean, fought with the Allies.
Huh?
Are they communists?
They are communists now, and the U.S. does not like the system of communism. What's up, Coach?
Hey, guys, and it is a big deal that the U.S. was not there because after World War I, we take a place in world politics that we have not let go of. We are the most powerful country in the world.
So we began as an imperial power, entered World War I to protect free trade. Involvement in the war led to changes for women, right? What was the big change for women after World War I?
They get to
They get to vote. That's right. Were there as big of changes for African Americans?
No.
No. Still going to be 40 years till then. But eventually, there was a lot of instability, and you get a Hitler, right? And that's all I got. So, you guys are going to complete. I know. You are going to complete this primary source, 14 points, with Woodrow Wilson. That activity. I will not be going over it because you guys don't want to participate.
This sounds like a really dumb question.
There's no dumb questions.
But how was translation?
Huh?
Was he made after a question, or was he just like something?
There's I mean, it's supposed to be like a characterization of it. He's just made after a little bit like Lincoln. If you look at just a small scene,
Just American colors.
Hunter, take the yellow one.
it's trying to.
What's the second one? What's the primary source?
It's called Primary Source, 14 points. It is due Thursday. If you need help understanding a word or need a definition, let me know.
And remember, you are coming to this class tomorrow. It's an 8A tomorrow.
That's wonderful.
Well, hey, juniors, get used to it because there's a good chance the block days are gonna be on Thursday, Friday.
Yeah, he put it out.
I mean, board break.
I'm gonna mark that.
Second class.
It's gonna be 8A, and then
I remember what the.
I think it's short on Friday.
CD.
You got 10 minutes.
But I'm sure they'll.
We get out of class at 25.
A and B, and C. Well, you aren't. There won't be, there's only gonna be one day a week where you can go to advisory, and you're not gonna be allowed to take tests in that. It's during that 1 hour lunch period that, you're going to be, you're making up stuff, getting help in class because you won't be released.
But I'm just confused.
That's the question a lot of us have, so, hey,
Like, isn't that just 1 year?
Like, how are you gonna have 600 kids roaming the school?
well, it's not
I
actually,
think it's just the main hall and library area.
Yeah, cause everybody's.
If I didn't have work, bro,
Right.
I would have started.
I'll take my water bottles off.
I don't think you.
Boy!
Dude, I don't know. I got nothing for you. Hey, if you wanna have that conversation, there's a very tall man who can explain it.
Right.
I don't feel like.
He's really very, no, he actually used to be something, but now he's messed up. He's not great. Oh, just, he played basketball. I think he played like,
No.
tore it up and just had kind of like. I know he was coaching basketball. He also He came up here and practiced.
Why am I close?
Now, he would sit tall. He would sit tall if he wouldn't stand next to me.
You got 9 minutes. I'd take out your computer and start working for you.
Look at next to him, that's like.
Well, I'm gonna have 7
I
minutes
just
left,
broke them more like.
and then by the time I get to campus, 6 minutes left.
All I'm hearing from you is excuses.
And then I'm feeling by
February.
I need like.
And for some reason, it just keeps it's just a thing.
And there's Liddy. Why do you do like that? Liddy, what?
Or did I think he had
No, Hunters is the only one up there.
Never accepted.
I accepted Hunters. I think you might have exited out Drew's or something.
Well, it doesn't matter, he's leaving after this hour anyway.
Do some of this and some of this. The 1927.
Hey,
You could do it all. So what?
You did.
I did
That ain't a bet, that's a measure of investment. Well, besides, she ain't very well.
I did. The whole thing that day, really time. I just kept trying to like,
I love shrimp.
For those types of fears, you have to do it during
Get off my face.
white stuff. I don't have to work stuff.
What do you guys play at for?
I don't know. Districts last year, like, but also that was class 3, class 4, ended up playing like.
I said,
I think it just various class, but like.
Okay, do you not know that?
Yeah, I don't know what it is, so I think it was.
It also.
That's
Two
two.
furniture?
I don't think it might have been.
One thing you have with
I just don't put a flex.
I played at every day for
Oh yeah, I like that. I love playing. I don't know, there's courses I play Crest that I play every other. I play a lot like Crystal Highlands. It's very silly. I might be like that. I'm trying to get my dad. I don't know right now if I can't do that.
That's tough. That's real tough.
Miles is funny. Miles is taking off. Miles is about one. Well, yeah, yeah.
Please tell me it's like a.
His and Neo's didn't take very long.
It's probably gonna.
Toby's probably very best just because it's.
Gabe, you smacking people?
3 minutes.
Well, we got that. So what?
My dad came over yelling at him.
My friend's playing
Both of you stop. Keep your hands to yourself. How many times?
He's my cousin, you know that?
I always get
Oh.
I live there every time to go down and like do districts. People delay go get some each.
Wait.
I don't know. They sent like 3 different schedules and all of them are different, so I don't know. I'm sorry.
I'm ready to go.
But everybody complains.
What did I gotta go?
There. We're going. Sorry, Mom, to go to the back.
Well, okay, we're gonna start at, I'm gonna start by 124, so I think that's all. I'll be done. Yeah, the Lord. Bruce and Buck.
We're doing that tomorrow. Woo! You're getting rid of that.
Hey, did you hear what I told him?
Keith, man.
Hey, did you hear what I told him?
All I have is-
I said you can stay here, you can stay with me, doesn't matter to me.
I got nothing to do on Saturday, too. You want to spend 4 hours with me?
Reality, huh?
Oh, reality is that class.
Yeah.
That's the one that's gonna really make you think.
Hi, Maddox.
Well, he's got.
How we doing?
Got a little bit of both. Both the junior classes, one's first hour.
Oh.
The kids that show up.
Yeah, you said you were going to stay home today.
Oh, yeah.
So did I need to.
Yeah, we got 30.
What's up, Eileen? Already, huh? What are we doing? How did you fall